The death of Lance Corporal George Hooley has cast a long shadow over an already fraught moment in transatlantic politics. A 28-year-old paratrooper, described by the Ministry of Defence as an exceptional soldier, he died not in combat but in a training accident while observing Ukrainian forces test a new defensive capability. His loss is a human tragedy, and his name now stands for the quiet, steady commitment that Britain has made to Ukraine's survival. One might expect such a moment to stiffen diplomatic resolve or generate a measured expression of solidarity from Washington. Instead, Donald Trump responded with a mixture of irritation, transactional language and unsubtle pressure on Kyiv and its European supporters. His remarks say less about death itself than about the way he now frames the entire war as an inconvenience, a burden, and above all a problem he believes he can force to a quick conclusion. When asked about the phone call with Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron and Friedrich Merz, Trump said he had exchanged pretty strong words with them, and this is a remarkable tone to strike on the very day a close ally mourns a fallen soldier. There's no public gesture of condolence, no attempt to acknowledge the political sensitivity of Britain losing a serviceman while supporting Ukraine. Instead, Trump used the moment to remind Europe of its supposed failings, to criticise Zelensky, and to signal that American attendance at a proposed weekend summit would depend on whether Europeans brought him something worthwhile. This is not diplomacy in a classical sense, it's leverage, and Trump uses it even when decorum calls for restraint. Trump's irritation is rooted in two calculations. First, he believes the war is costing the United States far more than it should. His language is strikingly reductive. He speaks of people fighting it out and of thousands dying ridiculously, as if Ukraine's resistance were a quarrel rather than the defence of a sovereign state against an imperial war of annihilation and aggression. This framing creates a moral falsehood. It implies that the war persists because Ukraine refuses to concede, not because Russia continues to invade. Second, Trump sees Europe as indecisive and expects it either to endorse his plan or to be blamed for stalling it. Recent interviews show a deep hostility to European governments, whom he has called weak and decaying. The fact that Britain has lost a soldier does not soften this view, rather it becomes secondary to the overarching narrative that Europe is failing to conclude a war that he claims he could end immediately if others stopped obstructing him. Ukrainian officials have now submitted a revised peace plan to Washington, reduced from 28 points to 20. The first version was biased towards Russian demands, including concessions on territory that Russia has not captured. Kyiv has tried to correct this, particularly on questions of sovereignty and security guarantees, but Trump's response was caustic. He claimed Zelensky had not read the original plan, a public humiliation designed to weaken the Ukrainian leader's negotiating position. The timing is significant, as Europe prepared a virtual meeting, as Kyiv drafted additional documents on reconstruction and security, and as the fighting around Pokrovsk intensified, Trump focused on the perceived failings of his allies rather than the substance of Ukraine's defence. The death of Lance Corporal Hooley would ordinarily prompt unity. Trump uses it instead to underline the sense of impatience. For Britain, the situation is delicate. A British paratrooper has died because the UK continues to support Ukraine with personnel, training and defensive technology. That support is strategic, moral and consistent with decades of foreign policy, yet the UK now finds itself dealing with an American president who publicly belittles European efforts at the very moment Britain is paying the cost in blood. Starmer responded with dignity, emphasising Hooley's service, courage and international duty, but the broader question hangs all over this. Can Britain continue its level of support if Washington is prepared to force a settlement that contradicts Ukraine's security, Europe's strategic interests and Britain's own commitments? There is a stark moral contrast here. Britain lost a soldier while helping Ukraine defend itself. Trump responded with political pressure rather than alliance solidarity, and the rhetoric of letting people fight it out carries an extraordinary cynicism, especially for a leader whose country has long defined itself as a guarantor of European peace. Lance Corporal Hooley's death reminds us why Ukraine must not be abandoned. Trump's comments remind us how fragile Western unity can become when the most powerful ally adopts a tone of impatience rather than leadership. The episode is revealing, not because Trump caused the tragedy, but because his reaction illuminates a profound shift in American political instincts. Where Britain sees sacrifice, he sees leverage. Where Europe sees a defensive war, he sees an inconvenient dispute. And where Ukraine sees a fight for national survival, he sees a negotiation to be accelerated through pressure, accusation, and conditional meetings. Lance Corporal George Hooley deserved better than to have his death occur during a moment of transatlantic tension. He represents the quiet nobility of service. Trump represents a doctrine much harsher. Alliances are conditional, sympathy is optional, and even the death of an Allied soldier is not enough to interrupt the performance of grievance politics.